Well, good afternoon.
Oh, hey. I wasn't paying attention. I was trying to get Twitter set up. But hey, everybody. Welcome once again. I am Nate Swick. I am joined here, as usual, by my friend and colleague, Greg Neese, here at the ABA. And we are going to do some live bird ID, birding chat, whatever y'all want, sort of talk here. We'll wait here a little bit. We'll vamp a little bit while we're waiting for some
I'm
people to arrive.
I'm getting a little feedback on your end, I think.
Oh, well, perhaps if anyone's out there can let us know if you hear it or not. Please let us. Of course, I cannot hear that. So I can, hold on, let me pull that up. Well, I don't hear it going out. So I'm going to go ahead and roll
All
as
right.
if we're going forward. Um, while we wait here for people to arrive, Greg, I usually ask you about the birding that's going on up in the Southern Great Lakes. I imagine you're getting to the peak, if not a little bit past peak. But what I really want to ask you about is what's with the feral cat thing in Chicago?
Oh boy. It's been a long misguided effort by the feral cat people, um, and it's boy. I don't know where this feedback is coming from, but I am
You've probably
getting
got a window open,
boy, not that
or
I
a window
know
that's
of.
playing sound.
I've got everything muted here. All right, we'll try to motor through this as best we can because I'm hearing you double.
Yeah,
um,
something's on. Something's feeding back on. That's probably hidden somewhere in the back of
is
your
it your
desktop.
phone, maybe? I don't know.
No, I don't go through my phone anymore.
No.
Yeah, so is it your contention that Chicago really is the most vermin-rich city on the
Oh boy, I don't know.
United
I don't think
States,
so. And
as
especially not the neighborhoods where
characterized
they're
by the
where they're
Washington
letting
Post?
the cats go. Basically, they're letting the cats go in neighborhoods like Lincoln Park, where there's just a lot of people who like having cats around.
Hmm. Certainly does seem like the motivation more than this idea that the cats are going to make any sort of real dent in the rat population. I feel like that's
They
a
really
story that we've
don't.
been
I
told
mean,
many
like New
times.
York rats, Chicago rats are the size of small dogs, and they tend to chase the cats around more than anything.
Right. I don't know why a cat would be worried about would even want to tackle a rat. That seems to be the case. They go after easier prey, which tends to be native birds and native reptiles if those are around. But yeah, the how's the birding up there? Things how's Montrose? Are you in Connecticut warbler time now?
Well, I was last weekend. I took friend of the ABA, Tony Fitzpatrick, birding out on the Mississippi River, and we had a phenomenal day. We finished with 119 species. Got really close up good looks at a cerulean warbler, which
Always a
basically
pleasure.
huh.
Always a pleasure.
Yeah, and basically when I say up close looks at a cerulean warbler, that means it wasn't 100 feet over your head, and,
Right.
and you're
Exactly.
looking at the undertail coverts. It
Yeah.
was down about maybe about 15 feet or 20 feet above eye level and about 30, 40 feet away. But we just got killer looks
That's
at that,
nice.
and
Yeah.
it was really fun birding with somebody who is just starting out and.
Hmm.
Was like he got 60 life birds on this trip,
Oh boy,
and
those are the days.
those are the days. And it was really fun doing our big day route where we normally like we plow through there racking up species as fast as we can, and spending some time with somebody who's never seen a blue grosbeak, and we get the blue grosbeak in the scope and just soak up the details of that bird for 20 minutes. So that was a lot of fun. As for Montrose, yeah, the Connecticut warblers started showing up this week. And, for those of you who don't know, Montrose Point in Chicago is probably the best place to see Connecticut warbler off their breeding grounds. It's certainly the most enjoyable because their breeding grounds tend to be mosquito-infested bugs, black flies and mosquitoes, whereas strolling around a city park in Chicago watching 2 or 3 or 4 Connecticut warblers is much more pleasant. But yeah, they showed up today. Got my fantasy birding pin on Montrose for tomorrow, so hopefully I'll pick that up tomorrow.
There you go.
How about you? What's going on down there?
We're a little past peak. We're starting to wait for flycatchers to come through. Usually this last week of May, first week of June is when the willow flycatchers turn up on a couple little wetland ponds that are down near the airport, not far from where I live, so I can get them for the year. They're already warbling vireos on territory there, which is nice. But for the most part, the peak was probably 10 days ago or so. Unfortunately, I was out birding quite a bit. I got to bird with my friend, both of our friend, Jenny Duberstein here. She has a family in Greensboro, so we went out and we went birding. And I got to say, it was quite a novelty to sit in a car with someone without wearing a mask. That was pretty wild. We're both vaccinated, obviously, so that was pretty cool to see us getting back to normal. But we had a really great day. A lot of warblers at a local park here, but that was some time ago, and by now things are cooling off. But I'm getting excited about my breeding bird survey routes, and I'm getting excited about the breeding bird atlas, which is in its first year here in North Carolina. So there's a lot of good summer birding to come. That's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I think that we have another week ahead of us of migration. It was pointed out in one of the groups on Facebook that the male warblers have pretty much moved on, and the female warblers are coming through. So things like female bay-breasted are being seen in good numbers right now.
And then what's this bird group?
Yep. And then starting right about now through the end of the month is all about flycatchers. Yeah. And so especially people in the migrant traps around the Great Lakes, this is when you go out and you'll go to, again, someplace like Montrose or a city park, and you'll get, all the expected empids all together, singing together. And it's a really good way to study those birds. And we'll be kind of discussing that a little bit coming up here.
Yes, for sure. We'll talk some empids. Just as a reminder for those of you who may not know what we do here, the ABA maintains, the American Birding Association maintains a Facebook group called What's This Bird? It's essentially a crowdsourced bird identification group. People have photos, they post their photos in the group, and the participants, the members will get together and let's try and identify that group and identify that bird. And what we see from year to year are sort of cycles of birds. Certain birds pop up at certain times of year, so it's kind of a neat way to watch the ebb and flow of migration across the continent. But what we're going to do here, Greg and I come by every couple weeks, and we'll pull some interesting photos that we've seen in the group. Interesting, that has a broad definition. It can be any number of interesting. It could be a bird we're seeing a lot of. It can be just a weird photo that illustrates the difficulty of bird identification, or especially bird identification from photos. And we'll talk about it. And if you have any questions, comments, whatever, please let us know in the comments. We will take questions as we go, and also a little bit towards the end.
Absolutely. You ready to jump in?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. So here we've got, did that come up?
I don't think it's up yet.
Okay, let's bring that up to front here.
Well, it's going to be worth it, folks. It's going to be a really good one.
Yeah, get ready for this. There we go.
All right.
There we go. That's the one we're looking for.
I thought we were going to do.
That's the one we're starting with.
Yeah.
So what do we have here?
A lot of greenery in the background. We've got an interesting looking feeder. I've never seen a feeder like that.
I've seen a few of those. They sell those at like Home Depot and stuff like that.
Oh, yeah. Anyway, what we have is a bird here that's a little bit unusual. It's got a little bit of streaking on the front. Whenever I see streaking like that, and it's a bird that doesn't quite register in my head, and it's this time of year, I'm immediately thinking a young bird, a recently fledged bird, which is going to be something that's going to be a little bit different. I'm on the right track on this one. The angle has really thrown me on this bird a little bit.
Yeah, the thing that I see on this bird is that big spiky bill.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
when people see this bird, they get thrown off by it because it's got that, and the fact that the bill is black and the dark eye with the dark lores just sort of emphasizes that whole
The link,
black face
like a hatchet.
line.
Yeah.
And people, your first impression might be a woodpecker. It's kind of got that short tail and that compact body and that big spiky bill. And I would not be at all, if you call this a woodpecker, that's not a bad first assumption. But it is not a
Some things
woodpecker.
that Yeah, some things that would make it not look like a woodpecker to me if I'm looking at it. Woodpeckers have a very distinctive tail. So they essentially have this tail that sort of levers itself to the trunk of a tree that enables them to really get a lot of leverage when they're whacking on the trunk like they do. And so their tail feathers tend to be very stiff, very narrow, and sort of pointy at the tip. And this bird
Yes.
clearly does not have those. These are the rounded tail feathers of a bird
This
that is not, evolved to take advantage of tree trunks
this bird has
that way.
soft tail
Yes,
tips.
exactly. Yep.
The woodpecker tips, like Nate was describing, you could take the feather and tip down, like stick it into suet, and it would just stick there. Whereas
Yeah,
this tail,
absolutely. If you
couldn't.
ever find like a woodpecker tail feather like lying on the ground when you're out birding, and you pick it up and you can play with it a little bit, and they're really stiff. Yeah.
Yeah,
compared to other bird feathers.
they support the bird's weight as it's sitting on the clinging to the tree trunk. The tail supports the bird's weight. So structure here, feather structure here is important. But this is one of the most common species in the ABA area, and it's a juvenile, and we're going to be talking about juvenile birds here a bit. This is a recently fledged European starling, and it really throws people off because they think European starling is a black bird, sometimes with white spots, with a big honking yellow bill. And the juveniles have this big honking black bill, and that as again those dark lores really sort of gives it a very different look. But yeah, this is a juvenile European starling now.
Yeah, and I think if we were seeing this bird in a slightly different, posture, it might, stand out more as a starling. Starlings have that very distinctive kind of pot-bellied, large body, relatively short tail when they're kind of bopping around on a lawn. It's a very unique shape compared to birds that you might see them with. And the way this bird is sitting, kind of barely hanging on to it's a little bit off balance, so its tail is flared, makes its tail look a little bit longer than they actually are. And that's what kind of gives me that weird impression. But as Greg says, that big bill, that eye line, those all stand out as starling traits, no matter what plumage or what position the bird is in.
Yeah. And so here we have a very similar bird.
Yeah.
And on a feeder, in kind of a similar pose.
Mm-hmm.
And boy, look at that face. It's got the big honking black bill, and it's got the dark eye line, and it's gray like that. And why isn't this a juvenile starling?
That's a great question, actually, because superficially the birds are very similar, and I have a feeling that you probably chose these two images simply because they do sort of look. We're letting people behind the veil here. Pay no attention to the work behind the curtain. There's a few things to look at that make it stand out as a woodpecker. So the way it's clinging to the side of that suet cage is a very woodpeckery way because of the way the tail is sort of, bent up underneath it. So it's trying to use that tail to leverage itself against that suet feeder. And so it's almost probably if we were looking at it from the side, we'd see that tail almost at like a 90-degree angle, leveraged up against that suet feeder, and gives the impression that there is no tail here. But one thing I'm looking at on this bird are those zebra stripes on the back that are very different from what you would expect on a starling.
Yes, there are very few small, smaller than a crow land birds that have bold black and white pattern on the back, and almost all of them are woodpeckers. Without really digging into it in the ABA area, I wouldn't be surprised if they were all woodpeckers. I can't think of anything that's got a boldly striped or spotted black and white back that isn't a woodpecker. So when you see, that bold pattern of black and white all the way across the back and the wings, first thing to think is woodpecker. And I'm going to move this to the next slide where we're going to compare the woodpecker with a starling that somebody posted from, let's see, where was the starling was in Illinois someplace. But again, you'll see, now that we see the other side of the starling that we couldn't see in that first image, the back is as plain or even more plain than the front. It's just like a dun gray blorb with a big spiky bill and a black eye line, whereas the woodpecker on the right, you'll see that zebra stripe back that you'll never see on a starling or almost any other bird of its size living in the woods.
Yeah, and because this is Florida, I don't think we've identified the woodpecker yet, but because this is in Florida...
Oh, yeah!
it's a more woodpecker.
It is a red-bellied woodpecker.
Which some may think, but a better name might be zebra-backed or zebra-striped woodpecker. It's much more distinctive. But this is a very, very young red-bellied woodpecker. And I think this is a good time to kind of talk about juvenile birds or fledgling birds that are like right out of the nest, because they do confuse a lot of people because they don't really... register with a lot of the birds that you're used to seeing, perhaps in your yard or in your neighborhood or whatever. But there are a few things that you can look at and see immediately that this is a juvenile bird. And the sort of streaking on the breast, more streaky is tended to be a trait of juvenile birds. And also, as you can see on this starling here, it's got a gape. So a gape is this yellow lining to the mouth, which actually they use as like a target for the parent bird to. When the parent bird is feeding the young bird, the yellow gape makes a big bullseye for them to like stick that food right in the gape, right in the craw. And so a lot of young birds have that gape that they sort of lose over the course of their first year. And if you see a bird with a big yellow whatever around its mouth, then you know that you're looking at a young bird. And they tend to make a lot of weird noises. I made a joke on Twitter that we're sort of in the port of spring that is that a Blackpoll warbler singing or is it a resident bird begging? Because they frequently make like a real high-pitched squeaky song that we usually associate with things like Blackpoll warbler, which are
absolutely
through.
And with with woodpeckers, so pretty soon people will be having flickers, which has a similar back pattern, and other woodpeckers showing up in their yards. They're hitting their suet feeders, and woodpeckers tend to be black and white or black and brown and have some red or yellow or some little splash of color on them. But if you look at this red-bellied woodpecker on the right, imagine it being in a black and white image with all the color taken out, and you can see the red cap what will be the red cap and nape of a red-bellied woodpecker. It's there. It's just darker gray than the rest of the bird. So the pattern and shape and everything is there. It's just lacking the colors of the adult.
Exactly. Yeah, especially the shape and the pattern. It's usually have like a duller version of the pattern. But yeah, that shape is going to stand out. That's going to be your first clue that we're looking at as a juvenile of a resident bird, of a normal bird. Because you look at that starling and it's got that classic, I talked about it, that sort of dumpy, deep-bodied, shortish tail, large bill that, just says starling. No matter what the feathers look like, the shape is always going to give you a clue that it's a starling.
And if you live in an area with a lot of starlings right now, pay attention. as they're fledging to what they sound like, because juvenile starlings are incessantly loud.
Yeah, they make a lot of noise.
They make a lot of noise. Um, I am seeing your comments popping up, I assume, in real time. So hopefully people are just being shy.
So I was like, why isn't anyone commenting?
Hopefully people are just being shy about chiming in here. or else we're going to be done pretty quick.
Yeah. We can only vamp so long about starlings.
Oh, yeah, actually, don't give us the opportunity to try, folks. I'm going to move on here.
Yeah, let's dig into the good stuff.
So, hitting a button, and a button isn't buttoning.
Steve Huggins asked if we should kill all starlings, Greg. Is that an inside joke?
No, we should not kill all starlings. Good old Steve, always good for a laugh or two. But so this is a bird that is showing up now in big numbers. That is always confusing, and because there's a lot of birds that look like this. And so what do you see in here, Nate?
Boy, first off, I want to say this is a really great photo of this bird. Like, it's just super sharp. The lighting is very nice. And yet I had to look twice at it because I wasn't exactly sure what I was looking at when I first pulled it up. It goes to show you the difficulty that you get with birds like that. But yeah, so this is it's got a fairly plain colored bird, darker kind of olive gray on the back, paler on the front. It's got, you can clearly see two wing bars on that right wing. It's got a two-toned bill. It's got a more or less upright posture. This is a bird that is in the flycatcher, the tyrant flycatcher family. All of those things are most things you're going to look for in the genera, I should say, Contupus, which is our peewees, and Impidinax, which are our little kind of very similar tyrant flycatchers, which frequently get confused for peewees. So we go back and forth. But this is this is a very interesting bird.
And so this bird, again, the upright posture, which is birds can momentarily sit in any posture way they feel. And now with cameras that are shooting 60 frames per second, you can get a picture of a warbler or a woodpecker or whatever in almost any pose. But the way that flycatchers make their living is to sit like this bird is, and in this erect posture, and they scan the sky, the airspace around them, and when they see an insect flying past, they sally out and catch it, and often will return to the very same perch. And that is clue number one, that you're looking at a flycatcher, that posture.
And this is just an aside, but this photo is really nice. You can actually, if you look really closely, you can see the little bristles that are coming out around the bird's bill. That is a tyrant flycatcher trait. That when they open their mouth, they act as sort of like a net to like further funnel those little bugs into its mouth.
Continuing that further aside, as you look at birds that make their living in this way, sort of the far end of that is caprimulgids, like our whippoorwill and Chuck-will's widow, and they have tiny little, almost the bills are almost not there, but the mouth is huge, and it opens up this big cavernous mouth, and it's surrounded by these bristles that make the mouth that much bigger. And whippoorwills, for example,
they eat like those big silk moths.
Yeah, and they catch moths, and they feed the same way. The whippoorwills will sit on a branch and watch for a moth to fly by, and then they fly up and catch it, and then will land back at the same place and do it. So they feed the same way, and it's the features are all the same, but they're exaggerated. And what makes it even cooler is that, the whippoorwill does this at night. But back to our flycatcher. Back to our flycatcher. Some of the things we notice right away are, look at the wings, the primaries. Look at those long primaries. So the flight feathers are quite long, hanging down past the base of the tail, and that is a good indication of peewees. They have these long wings. Another indication that we're looking at a peewee is the smudgy undertail coverts, which they
Matt
often
Smith,
have.
I'll give a shout out to Matt Smith, Fantasy Birding. He points that out frequently when I am focusing on other field marks, and so he's like, "Oh yeah, this bird has or does not have the smudgy field marks." So he sets us straight a lot of times. But yeah, that's a really good one, and the long wings especially. And also, if you look at this bird, it does not have much of an eye ring either.
Correct. It's got a dark
especially
face.
The smaller impids, you will be able to see an eye ring, sometimes more prominent than others. Some of the larger impids like willow and alder tend not to have an eye ring, but or not to have as obvious an eye ring. But their wings are not going to be nearly as long, and they're not going to have that smudgy undertail coverts. This is the way this bird is sitting is a very Empidanax sort of impression. Usually peewees will often show a little bit of a crest or a little peaked head. This bird does not have that, but that's just the way the bird is sitting, and that's not necessarily a definitive field mark. It's just sort of an impression. And maybe if we were in the field and we were watching this bird, it would move around a little bit, and we would see that more often and get more of a Contupus peewee impression.
Yeah.
But this image as it is, it's showing a lot of really great field marks, but still, your first guess when you see it is like, oh, maybe an impid. But nope.
Right.
Nope.
And so, being in New Jersey, our only real choice here is eastern wood peewee, which is what this bird is. Right. And a couple other things to note, just while we have it in front of us here, is it's got that kind of gray, smudgy breast, and a white throat that's kind of offset by that. But the gray smudginess of the breast is really indistinct, and you might even take it to be a shadow. It's not really. It's a very secondary feature, and I'm going to move into the next slide here if it'll do it for me. There we go. So here now we have, on the right is an eastern wood peewee. It might be a western, I'm not sure, but for our discussion it doesn't matter. Actually, I think this one's a western. It looks a little bit darker. But look at the shape of the bird on the right and the bird on the left. Now, the person who originally posted the last picture we looked at the peewee asked if it was an olive-sided flycatcher. And it is not. It is an eastern wood peewee. But the bird on the left is an olive-sided flycatcher. And look at how long those wings are. It's got like it's almost like a
tail is as well.
And how relatively short the tail is. It's got this. It almost looks like a Dracula cape. And in both of these birds we can see the wide bill of a flycatcher. But now also look at the breast of the olive-sided flycatcher on the left versus the smudginess of the breast on the right. Now here we have real pattern. The olive-sided flycatcher has a vest. It doesn't have that kind of smudginess. But yes. The takeaway here is the shape. Note the very long wings and relatively short tail of the olive-sided versus the longer tail and not so noticeably long by comparison. Now we're gonna go to another comparison here.
Olive-sided flycatcher always seems to me to be very top heavy as well. Like the head compared to the rest of the body is really large, which gives it a very distinctive. I mean, that just adds to the sort of distinctive profile that they show when you see one sitting on top of a a tree like they do. That very stands out as very much a very different bird than an eastern wood peewee. That said, a single photo like the ones that we're seeing, they can look quite similar.
And I lost my train of thought there. But
moving to the next photo.
well, the next photo is another comparison again with eastern wood pewee. But let's move into that to talk about for a moment the primary projection here. So the bird on top is an eastern wood pewee, and the bird on the left bottom is a willow flycatcher. And a willow flycatcher is the empid most frequently confused with a pewee.
Yeah, the most pewee-ish.
Because it's got that little crest, it's got a dark face. But look at the difference in the primary projection. Look at the wing feathers and how much longer the pewee is than the willow flycatcher.
Yeah, when you see a pewee sitting up in the top of a tree, those wings just look like sickles, like just kind of hanging down almost the entire length, almost halfway to the length of the tail for the most part. And you can see that really well in this photo. This is a great comparison. Whereas when we talk about primary projection, the primaries are the outermost feathers on the wing. When the bird folds its wings, they kind of stick down the farthest, so they go the furthest down the length of the tail. And we're talking about the projection of those feathers past the kind of stacked up secondaries, which you can see on the bird's folded wing as well. And yeah, the pewee, I mean, they go way down, and the willow, they don't go much further at all. They barely gets past the rump on a willow flycatcher. And that is that is an adaptation to a long migration. Pewee is a bird that migrates. Boy, you help me out here, Greg. They go all the way to northern South America, don't they?
Yeah,
they
do.
Way.
Yeah, they go completely across the Caribbean.
Migrant. Yeah, and whereas willows don't go nearly as far, so they don't need the long wings to be as they don't be energy efficient. But yeah, that really stands out. You don't always see them in similar places, so that's another thing. But of course, migration, anything goes in migration.
Exactly.
Can show up just about any place.
This time of year, it's likely to see both of these species in a city park, and in the east, right now. Yeah. But the takeaway here is when you see a bird like this, you see one of these small flycatchers. The primary projection is something to pay attention to, because while there is a set in the middle where it's subtle, there are birds on either end where it's not subtle. So eastern wood pewee, Acadian flycatcher is another one that has long primary projection. Yeah. Least flycatcher and willow flycatcher have very short primaries.
Least flycatcher looks like it's got like little club wings, like they're practically not long at all. It adds to the sort of diminutive impression that you get when you see a least flycatcher, which is sort of all the things that make a least flycatcher all coming together, like the big looking head, the big eye, the tiny little bill, the little short club wings. All of those things are adding together, but that's just one thing that seems very obvious when you see one.
Absolutely. And so if you look at a bird like this and you see one of the extremes, very long or very short primaries, you're going to kind of weed out the middle very quickly, and vice versa.
I'll pause right here before we move on and just say, if you have any questions or comments about birds and bird identification, please let us know in the comments. I'm trying to keep an eye on them on, we're on Facebook in the West's Bird group. We're on the Avian.
I'm watching
YouTube
Facebook. I'm not
on
watching
Twitter as well.
I'm not watching Twitter or YouTube, but
theoretically,
Facebook...
people should be able to leave us comments on Twitter, but I haven't figured out how to do that with their new live video thing that they've changed to. Anyone knows, please shoot me a message and let me know.
Our Facebook crew is being uncharacteristically quiet
today.
Don't know what's going on with them.
Greg, and I do just want to say, I don't know if you can fix this on the fly, but your little name tag at the bottom of your picture is not there. No one knows who you are.
Oh, gosh.
Screen.
Let's
I don't know if you want to fix that or not. I'll just keep saying Greg Neese, Greg, and referring to you frequently, but it just doesn't seem fair. I have one.
Here we go. Let's see here if I can move this. Oh, look, there I am.
There you are. Yeah, I see it.
Hello.
Finally.
Okay, so I'm gonna
Although
move
now
on here.
now the video is a little off. We're doing this on the fly.
All
Yeah,
right,
you just need to
awesome.
move that over a little bit. Thank you, OBS.
Oh, I see what's going on here. I need to move
Steve Huggins
this.
asks in the comments, I'll let you do that. And any chance you explain why that's a willow and not an alder? I from the photo, I don't know. I assume that the person who identified that bird um, identified it correctly, but that's Greg's
Yeah,
photo. So
I don't exactly remember why I have that photo. I have that photo labeled as willow flycatcher. Um, it may very well be that I took that image and heard the bird sing. Just looking at it, I would say
I was gonna say I do get a willow impression from it. Just the bill
I
looks a
do.
little bit big, and the head looks kind of peaky in the back.
The
They
face is
just have a
very
different
dark.
face. Yeah, yeah. Those
Um,
that seems willowy to me.
and the
But you always
tones
like to hear him called to
are
be
a
sure.
little brownish
Yeah,
versus greenish. Again, these are all really subtle things.
right.
But yeah, the main thing, as Nate pointed out, I think the bill looks a bit big, and the bird just kind of looks a bit hefty and lanky, and alder tends to look a bit more compact and than this bird does.
Beth
But
Gunzel
that
asks,
is
are they passing? Do they breed in Chicago? That would be your question. I don't know. They have an interesting distribution in the southeast. I'll tell you that.
which bird are we talking about?
Both willow and alder, I assume.
Willow breeds in the Chicago area. Alder does not.
Yeah, it's the same down here. Willow breeds in the Piedmont, where if you want to find breeding alders, you have to go up into the mountains. So like up above 3,500 feet into those kind of fir seeps, like kind of
Yeah,
wet fir spruce areas up in the mountains in the Appalachians. That tends to be how they shake themselves out for the most part.
yeah. The
Alder is
closest
the
to
more northerly, more boreal bird, and willow is the more southerly, more willow swamp bird.
the closest alder flycatchers breed to the Chicago area, I believe, is west central Wisconsin. Okay, we're gonna move here into another bird with our sluggish slide projector. Here
Boy,
we
this
go.
bird has very long primary projection, Greg. Why isn't it an eastern wood pewee?
Boy, you think I picked it for that reason? I don't
Oh,
know.
I don't know.
This bird has very long sickle-like wings,
Very long primary.
a very dark face, and look at that flycatcher bill. What
Yeah,
kind
sure.
of flycatcher is this?
Boy, this is such a strange flycatcher that this is actually a swallow. Um,
Yeah.
Things that make it stand out for not fly. So most flycatchers have a bicolored bill. At least empids and Contupus flycatchers do. They're going to have a little bit of light color on the bottom mandible, and this is an all black bill. It's also not as long. While it is a fly catching bill, it's sort of a different variety. It's very broad, and flycatchers do have a very broad bill if you see them from underneath. But it's relatively short compared to the head, right? So I'm saying relatively short because when I say, short, I'm talking about in comparison with the bird's head, the rest of the bird's body. This is a
Well,
very
this
small
is
looking bill.
and this is a neat view because we're seeing this bird from
Yeah.
underneath, and the swallow, the bill is it's almost a perfect triangle. It's almost as wide as it is long. And there really aren't any flycatchers that have a bill that's short and wide.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
but
Not in
the
North
ver-
America, at least.
yeah, exactly. There are some spade bills
Some
and
weird ones.
some
in the
weird South
tropics.
American birds that. But the very very long wings. These wings are as long as the tail on this
Yeah, the
bird,
tail's very short.
and the tail is very short. And a bird with wings that long is a swallow. Although, if you were looking in a book and just looking for birds that look like this, why isn't this a chimney swift?
Well, for starters, is because I can see the feet. So swallows will perch on branches like a normal bird will, whereas chimney swifts are incapable of doing so. They only have little grasping, tiny little feet that can hold onto vertical surfaces. So they are completely aerial. They spend almost all their time in the air catching insects, doing pair bonding, mating in the air, bathing in the air, all this stuff in the air, whereas swallows will occasionally come to a perch and clean up their feathers and do the swallow thing, but or do the normal bird thing. But yeah, the very long wings, very short tail, that is an aerial bird. It spends a lot of time in the air. That's for
Yeah,
sure.
and just on that
cool.
chimney swift tangent, it's pay attention to form, as Nate was pointing out. We can see this bird's feet, so we know that it's not a swift. Swifts and hummingbirds are very closely related, and they have similar feet. If you look at any picture of a hummingbird, or if you have hummingbirds at your feeder, you'll notice the feet are tiny. And a swift has tiny little feet, just like a hummingbird. And the swift's wing is also shaped very similar to a hummingbird's wing. And so you could think of these birds as being sort of two cousins, one adapted for hovering in front of flowers and another one adapted for spending all of its time in the air. But structurally, swifts and hummingbirds are very similar.
Yeah.
But getting back to this bird, so we have a brown swallow in the spring, and that really narrows it down to two species. So we have northern rough-winged swallow,
Well, maybe three.
and what's the third?
I've seen a lot of kind of dull brown tree swallows this spring.
Yeah, that's
well.
true.
So
That's
there's still
true.
a few of them around.
Yeah,
Most of them
yeah.
are the beautiful kind of bluish green, very shiny, classic tree swallow. But there are still some dingy ones. I think those might be last year's birds.
Yeah. So all right. So that narrows it down to three species of swallow. So we have this. This could be a first year tree swallow. This could be a northern rough-winged swallow, or this could be a bank swallow. Now, if you look at the field guides, they're going to point out the differences being the underparts. And you frequently see these birds flying overhead. So that's a good thing to note. But
See
you
both
can't,
sides. Yeah.
you can't see the breast of this bird. And the most prominent feature of bank swallow versus rough-winged swallow is a bank swallow has a clean white breast, and it has a very well-defined breast band, almost like a killdeer or a plover. Not killdeer has two breast bands, but like a semi-palmated plover. It's got this breast band. But what a bank swallow also has that we can see here is it has a white collar that goes around the back of the neck. Also, look at how messy and just kind of smudgy this bird's throat is. In all plumages, a tree swallow has a very sharply defined face and throat. There's a sharp line there. They're not smudgy like this. So this is a northern rough-winged swallow.
Yes, that's correct. Northern rough-winged swallow, and I would identify this from a tree swallow just based on tree swallow would have a white chin as well and a very very clearly bicolored head. And also they're shaped differently. I don't know. Maybe this is I don't know if this is getting too esoteric, but tree swallow and bank swallow both have like kind of large heads and compared the size of their body, whereas northern rough-wing feels a little bit smaller. They fly a little bit different too. Bank swallows are much smaller. I mean, they're North America's smallest swallows. So if you see a bank swallow flying around with a bunch of kind of lake swallows like rough-winged and tree in a similar sort of place, it's going to really stand out as a much, much smaller bird. And also they have that really deep kind of croaky call that
They do.
sounds almost like a frog. Northern rough-wing has kind of a sort of call, whereas bank
How did that go? How did
lower.
that go? Could you do that again?
I don't know. Yeah, this is what they sound like to me. But bank
one
swallows
other
are like
thing-
kind of very deep, kind of it's like very, very different, and like almost like someone sticking like an electrical buzz, like one of those like little joy buzzers that people used to put in their hands when you're kids and like shock their friends. That's sort of what they sound like.
Yeah, and tree swallows have a much more melodious
Yeah, it's like
chirping.
a chirpy thing. Yeah.
Actually, I've seen people mistake tree swallows high overhead for Henslow's sparrow off in the distance.
Oh, really? Huh.
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting.
And one other thing to note is that tree swallows almost always show some white on the tertials, which are those three big feathers in the middle of the wing that we see. And so you'll often see some white on the tips or the edges of those feathers.
Yeah. Just a quick Susan Sherman and YouTube notes. Why can't it be a female purple martin?
Oh, well, for one thing, the color. Purple martins tend, the purple martin is gray. It's not brown like this. It can have some brown mottled in there, but it overall has this sort of a gray mottled upper part. And it has dark mottling on the under tail coverts, and we can see the under tail coverts of this bird pretty well.
Yep. Yep, I'd say that's right. And also it's a very bulky swallow too, like just kind of bigger in the shoulder, which stands out to me, at least when I see them kind of perched. Although this angle, it makes things very difficult.
Yeah. John Lowry asks, how many alder flycatchers are there? I don't understand the question. I guess, yeah.
This is a reference to a paper that came out a few days ago that was tried to do an estimate of
gotcha. Yes, I remember seeing
species.
That. Yep.
And their models were kind of all over the place to the extent that they noted that the sixth most abundant bird in the world is alder flycatcher. That was the claim, which sounds a little exactly. That's been the response of like everyone who I've told this to is like, what?
Yeah, no, I call foul on that one. Right. We're going to move ahead here. And so I chose this one this morning because this is kind of representative of a lot of what people are going to be seeing and posting. Not necessarily this species, but so, we have an LBJ here. We have a little brown job. We can see it's got kind of a long bill. It's got dark lores. Is this a starling? The face kind of looks a little bit like that starling we saw.
Yeah.
But there's
boxes for starling for me.
There's a couple of things we can see here. One is that it has a white stripe over the eye. That's pretty bold. But the reason I picked this picture is the yellow gape, and that is the yellow base of the mouth where the mouth opens up right under the eye. It's got that yellow fleshy gape, which tells us that this is a recently fledged bird.
Yep. So a lot of the cues that you usually rely on to identify birds are going to be skewed, perhaps. Another thing that recently fledged birds have is frequently like their tail feathers are very short and stubby as they're growing in their flight feathers. And it does appear like this bird, even though the tail is a bit foreshortened, it's got very short tail feathers, which is not a usual field mark of what I believe this species to be.
Yes, and that,
so it's a bird with
and
a very
that
long
is a
tail.
point. Yes, and that is something to point out and for people to keep in mind, that young birds continue to grow after they leave the nest. And even though they are adult size, essentially, the bills may be shorter, the tails, the feathers may be short, and the bill may be short. This is really confusing in birds like ibis, which grow very long bills, but it takes a while for that bill to grow.
Yeah.
And
there's fledged ibis is a weird looking bird. It's kind of
absolutely. So we have a fledgling here, and so three things we can note. One, it's in California. Two, it has that bold white stripe over the eye, and we can see the tail fairly well, even though it's behind a little twig. And you'll notice that it has bars that go across the tail horizontally. And there's very few of our birds that have barring going across the tail like that, and almost all of them are wrens.
Yep.
and there's only
Also, the
one
sort of
wren.
running around in the sort of tangly underbrush is very much a wren sort of thing to do, though lots
Yep,
of young birds do that.
with that thin, long insect catching bill.
Yeah,
Um, and there's
probing.
only one wren in California that has that bold white supercilium, that stripe over
Mm.
the eye, and that is Buick's wren. So this is a fledgling juvenile Buick's wren.
Yep, Buick's. I've heard it pronounced a couple different ways. I'm not exactly sure how it is. Melodious Wren, if you want to get rid of the eponyms, they have a lovely song. But
They
yeah,
do.
Buick's Wren in your field guides and in your hearts.
I'm going to just push on here. And now this picture comes from Tennessee, where this bird is unusual, but they're having a really good year for them. All over the Midwest, this bird is showing up. And this is a shorebird, a sandpiper. I think most people that have glanced through a bird book can recognize this bird as a sandpiper of some sort. But what are we seeing here, Nate?
Yeah, so this I think Sandpiper is a good place to go here. It's got the kind of large body, relatively small head, long probing bill, and long wading legs. So Sandpipers are a good place to start. But boy, that very distinctive bright white underparts and kind of cool yellowy green streaking on the back, and of course that big red swath on the side of the neck. This is going to be one of your maritime shorebirds, call of the Phalaropes. And these are red-necked Phalaropes, which is a really cool bird to find inland in Tennessee.
Yeah, it is. Now, it can be tough. It's amazing how similar in the field red-necked and Wilson's Phalarope are. In the books, they don't look anything alike. You see the two side by side in the books, and you're like, okay, I could tell those two apart, no problem. You get them in the field, that's another matter. And above, in this image, is a Wilson's Phalarope that I took a picture. I took this picture Sunday when we were out with Tony and Larry. And below is the Wilson's Phalarope. The red-necked Phalarope. And you'll notice right away how similar these birds are, maddeningly similar.
The patterns are very similar, yeah.
Yeah. But as Nate pointed out earlier, the white kind of buffy-ish striping on the back sets off the red-necked on the bottom there. But one field mark, as these birds, again, we're talking about still pictures. These birds are both very active feeders. They tend to, they swim for one thing, and we don't have pictures of them swimming here. But even when they're walking around feeding, they're very active. They walk in circles. They're always picking and dipping and walking around. And so you get views from all angles of them usually when you get a Phalarope in front of you. And so looking at the Wilson's, which is the bird above, this is another shot of that same Wilson's from Sunday. One thing you'll notice is that white spot on the back of the neck. And the Wilson's Phalarope has a white nape, and in pretty much all plumages. And if you can see that, now you'll notice that this bird also has dark streaking going down a gray back, whereas, as we noted, the red-necked has sort of straw-colored streaking going down the back. And now side by side, that's a Wilson's in the back and a red-necked in front.
It's a neat photo.
And you'll see just how distinct that white nape on the Wilson's is.
Yeah, and just if you're too far away to see that, it's hard to miss a bright white spot on a lot of birds, no matter how far away. But they are sort of different shaped as well. Wilson's, as far as Phalaropes are concerned, is much bigger, much longer, with a really needly little tiny bill, whereas red-necked and red Phalarope, which is even less likely inland, tends to be a little more compact and with a thick kind of baton-like bill. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean,
Wilson's Phalarope is more of a, I don't know. It's got a bigger body and a smaller head. It's kind of a weirdly shaped shorebird, whereas rednecked and red seem to be more kind of normal shaped, as normal as Phalaropes are. Phalaropes are bonkers, kind of in terms
they
of
are.
how they look.
And even in this picture where the Wilson's in back is out of focus, you can still see the difference in bill size,
Yeah.
and how it really looks like the Wilson's has this just big needle stuck on the front of its face.
Yeah. Yeah. So we're coming up on 2:30, which is about how long we wanted to go. If any of y'all
Yeah.
have questions, let us know in the comments of the various places that we are broadcasting. But if not, then we will probably say while we're waiting. While we're waiting for people to comment if they want to, we will say one little plug for the American Birding Association. If you enjoy these sorts of free resources that the American Birding Association provides, not only these What's This Bird programs, but also various great bird content on our website. We have a free podcast that I host. If you enjoy us talking about birds, please check that out. And go ahead and join the ABA and help support us. We're also doing our nesting season appeal right now. So we're going to do the NPR thing. If you enjoy the stuff that we do right here, I don't know, throw us a few bucks, $5 here, $10 here. We certainly appreciate everything that you can get.
Our digital membership, which is a full membership, full access to all of our magazines online, everything we produce, is $30 a year, which is $250 a month. That's
like
a big cup of
HBO Max.
It's a big cup of coffee at Starbucks, or not even. What am I talking? Not Starbucks, Dunkin'. Starbucks, that's $5. So
what we're saying is that it is easy to help support the American Birding Association,
and you can help us. You can help
joining
us continue to do what we're doing here, and we would really like you to become part of the family and help us do what we do here.
Sure. Yeah. And, we'll be coming at you again in a couple weeks. It's usually Greg and I. Sometimes Ted Floyd gets in the mix sometimes if one or the other of us can't do it. But it's usually Greg and I. We'll probably be back next week. So mark your calendars for, what is it? It's the first, it's like June something. I had some people tell me that they didn't know when we scheduled these things. So we need to be better. So June 4th. Which is actually also on my calendar as my kid's last day of school. So the summer will well and truly be here. So we'll be back at around 1:30ish. Keep an eye on the ABA's What's This Bird group or on our Twitter feed at ABA if you are interested in following us next time. Otherwise, if I don't have any questions, I guess we'll say goodbye for today.
Yeah, let's see. We've got 2 more minutes here, but so far everybody's being really quiet, and we can see you watching. So I guess, they're I see people watching, but I think maybe they've learned everything. Their heads are full. Just like after a big meal, they're just kind of sitting back and digesting all of this.
Yeah, digest those Phalarope identification.
Yeah, Phalarope. Phalarope ID. Just like everybody fell asleep.
Everybody we lost it. Yeah. So we'll go ahead and say goodbye to you for this afternoon. I want to thank everybody for following us along and watching us. And otherwise, please consider joining the ABA. Did I get it right? I got it right this time. Please consider joining the ABA, aba.org/join, or helping us out with our nesting season appeal, aba.org/appeal. Otherwise, we'll see you in a couple weeks. Adios, everybody.